Hello and very warm welcome to the Horizon interview. 60 minutes of big questions about the big stories from the news and beyond with fresh insight and critical analysis. I am Christian Ogdo. Thanks for joining us. Coming up in the next hour, the killings and abduction in the country are scary and petrifying, to say the least. From the wave of killings in southern Kaduna to the gory execution of humanitarian workers in Borno State, into the constant onslaught caused by suspected bandits and herdsmen. A picture of the state of insecurity in the country has thrown everyone into confusion, with various groups calling the federal government to bring the perpetrators to book and take responsibility for their inability to secure the lives and property of the citizenry. Today, we'll speak to an international security affairs analyst, David Otto, and the president of the Southern Kaduna People's Union, Sokapu, coming up in a moment. As far back as 2015, Nigerians voted for President Muhammadu Buhari because he promised to tackle the numerous security challenges that confronted the nation at the time. It doesn't seem like President Buhari and his team of service chiefs have been able to quell the wave of terrorist attacks and banditry in the country. However, the army chief, Tuko Buratai, says the country is safer than 5 years ago. The statement comes days after dozens of people were killed in a spate of attacks in Kaduna, suspected to have been carried out by militia groups. Attacks of this nature have gripped the region since January and caused the displacement of hundreds of residents. According to a human rights group, Christian Solidarity worldwide, at least 27 people were killed within 24-hour period between 19th and 20th July in attacks by armed assailants in the southern part of Kaduna. Here is a cross-section of residents speaking of attacks in northern Nigerian state of Kaduna.
All in this community, we've lost 12 people. It was just yesterday that we recovered a corpse just behind here that was buried. So far, in this community as it is now, as you can see for yourself, only the youth that can just protect the house. As far as the matter is concerned, children and women are no longer in this place. And all of us that you see here, most of us, since that Monday up to now, we have not eaten.
We do not know where to go with this kind of situation. It's beyond our control now. Our appeal to government is to further look at this issue critically and see what they can do to alleviate the fears that exist. We are farmers, predominantly farmers in this place.
Persons. So we've not updated our record, but we have 2,416 persons now in the camp. And we have a number of others that are coming from the town, so we feed them.
Okay, for more on this, I'm now being joined via WebEx from London by David Otto, the international security affairs analyst, is a counter-terrorism and organized crime expert. And here in the studios in Nigeria's capital, Abuja, I have Honorable Jonathan Asake, who is the president of the Southern Kaduna People's Union, otherwise known as Sokapu. He was a former member of the House of Representatives. Let's begin from home here. Honorable Asake, you want to give us a narrative of the state of things in southern Kaduna.
Thank you for having me here. The state of things in southern Kaduna, I can only describe it this way, that southern Kaduna is currently under siege by armed militia that continue to invade our communities across the local governments, starting from Chukun local government, where we've had over 18 communities invaded, people killed, maimed, women raped, others abducted, and displaced into other communities, into neighboring communities, only waiting for those communities to be further invaded, and they are further displaced. The same thing goes with Kajuru local government, where presently over 30 communities have been invaded and displaced into neighboring communities and into suburbs of Kaduna, because these two local governments have a common border with Kaduna metropolis. Now, the same story with Zango and Katab local government, Kauru local government, Jamaa local government, Kaura local government, Sanga local government, and of course, most of the local governments that constitute southern Kaduna. The story is the same, where these invaders come oftentimes by night and they kill mostly women and children. Women and children. And these mostly are farming communities. And so they go to the very vulnerable communities, those communities that are detached. And they target very soft targets also, oftentimes. And that is why most of the victims, the casualties, are always women and children in the majority. And so this is the story very regularly across southern Kaduna.
So it has become a sing-song that you cannot, in southern Kaduna, you cannot sleep with your two eyes closed.
Never.
Where are the security people? Where I know I was reliably informed that southern Kaduna is now under the jurisdiction of the 3rd Division of the Nigerian Army. Is that so?
Yes. We used to have roadblocks by the military. But recently, before the new wave of the attacks, most of these roadblocks were removed. We don't know why. And so oftentimes, when these invaders invade the communities, they oftentimes come by night or very early morning hours when people are sleeping. And they continue to hack down people in their sleep. You must have been seeing the gory pictures of the casualties of these attacks, mostly the women and the children. But most of these pictures are never shown to the public.
They are too gory.
They are too gory.
Yeah,
we have them.
To be shown.
We go, you take them, you won't believe that in the Nigeria of 21st century, that will have a situation where you have people that will sit down and plan to just go and attack other people in their sleep. They have never had a quarrel before that time. They have never known anybody in that community. And so when we begin to hear the narrative that it is communal clash, or it is farmers and herders clash, or it is reprisal attacks, it baffles every one of us that know what is going on. Because these invaders invade these communities and they move out and look around the hills or the forest. It is only when the youth of the community go after them in the break of the day that you see the security coming in. And it is those same youth that are going after the invaders, not the security, that will be arrested as the aggressors and thrown into detention. While those aggressors, those invaders will still look around, waiting and planning just to come back for another invasion. A very good case happened just last week in Zango, where they invaded the community and they were still looking around. When members of the community went back, some members went back to see the level of carnage, they were attacked again. because the invaders were looking around and there was no effort whatsoever by the security to chase them out.
Which meant that the first attack, the people didn't call in the security. The security now, you said army roadblocks have been removed.
Yes.
Is that why the attack is now so frequent?
Well,
were the roadblocks a kind of deterrent?
Well, the
before?
roadblocks, because, you know, passing with some of these dangerous weapons, even though we know most of them, they don't use the normal routes, but a lot of them normally come on motorbikes. They will line up on motorbikes.
And there's supposed to be curfew in southern Kaduna.
Now, that is a different part of the story. In June 10th, precisely, a young teacher was slaughtered in his farm. It's a young teacher with 2 children. And his corpse was deposited by the riverside. And at the wake of the day, the youth of the area and the women now found out that, look, there has been one case too many in this locality of these isolated killings. Even the chief of the area, the paramount ruler of Atap chiefdom, his younger brother was slaughtered in his farm not long before that incident. So they were protesting, but the security, alongside the Commissioner of Internal Security of Kaduna State, visited the area. Before you could say Jack Robinson, 15 people were on the ground by the bullets of the security. And one person died instantly. A lot of them were wounded. They are still receiving treatment.
Why was that?
Why? No, because they were protesting the killing of one of their own. And it was not a violent protest. But at the end of the day, what we thought was the government of Kaduna State will now set up a machinery to find out what led to the killing of that youth, to fish out the perpetrators and bring them to book, to justice. But what the governor did instead was to impose a 24 hours curfew within that local government. And as I'm talking now in this studio, over 7 weeks running, the people of that area, who are mostly local farmers, are under 24 hours curfew. You can go out to your farm. Many have attempted to go to their farms and they have been arrested, detained. You can't do anything.
Okay, great.
And upon this came the latest attack.
Okay, would come back to that and you talk more on it. David Otto, I'll come back to you the moment to take some messages after the break. You're still watching the Arise interview. We've still got more still ahead. Stay with us. Okay, you're welcome back to the Arise interview with me, Christian Ogodo. We're live in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. Let's now cross over to London, where I have David Otto, the international security analyst. And of course, I still have Honorable Jonathan Asake here with me in the studios. David, as an international security expert and expert in terrorism and probably espionage, what would you attribute these incessant attacks? Asake has described it as invasion, you know, that has become an everyday hallmark on the lives of the people of southern Kaduna. What are your thoughts here?
Thank you very much. I think the description of these attacks. I've seen some of the gory images that have come from southern Kaduna. I have also been opportune to investigate attacks that have come from other communities in Kaduna. But I've also seen similar patterns of of attacks in Katsina State, in Zamfara State, in Niger, state. I think in Niger State. I think what is important here is to first of all look at these attacks from a point of criminal acts. Because if you want to solve a problem right, you've got to solve the right problem, and it requires not just the state of Kaduna, but also the federal government to understand the underlying motivations behind these so-called farmer headers or reprisal attacks. Because the reason why I call them reprisal attacks, because if you look at the pattern in which these killings are carried out, some people describe them as bandits, but bandits do not carry out attacks, of this nature. Where people come and steal, and what they want to get away with, is to get away with the booty. Nobody has time to, carry out the kind of massacre that we've seen in recent and in previous videos. And again, remind you that this is not just a recent thing from January of 2020. This has been happening for the past 2 years, if I may say so, but more than that. So I think what is important here, Honorable has made some very very good points. But I think what is important is what is the solution to this, and the solution is for these local communities, the state of Kaduna, to go down to the bottom and understand why these attacks are being carried out, because they know why these attacks are being carried out. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. These people belong to the Kaduna state. They know the reasons why these attacks are being carried out by the so-called Fulani headsmen and the so-called bandits. These attacks, are a result of some underlying factors. It could be attacks that are carried out because, as I've seen in so many reports, that it's been reported that the Fulanis have had their heads, their cattle, being, raided and stolen, and they are carrying out these attacks as a reprisal attacks against the communities that they suspect to have carried out these atrocities. Now, it could be right, it could be also wrong, but I think what is important in order for these attacks to stop is for the local communities to be sincere about the real origins and the real causation factors of this attack. It is not going to come from Asarok. The president, could make a declaration that he would defeat the attack in 1 week, but it still has to come from the full commitment of the people of Kaduna State, inclusive. And, I think one thing which people have to understand when it comes to security intervention or bringing in the army is there to protect territorial integrity. The army doesn't have the capacity to understand the internal dynamics of what happens within communities. This comes from the community. And if the police and the security services, including the military, is not winning the war, it's because the community itself is losing the war. So I think this has to be very, very clear in terms of looking at whose responsibility is it to deal with this crisis. The responsibility must first come from the people themselves with a willingness to resolve these problems by pointing out with sincerity what are the underlying causes of this problem.
The underlying causes of this problem. Let me ask Jonathan, the man at the head of Sokapu and at the center of all these annihilating storm, as I would describe it, before we'll come back to you again, David. So, what are the underlying factors that could have given rise to this invasion, to the incessant killings that is almost every day now, withdrawal of the military and their checkpoints?
Okay. You see, from his comment, he said the local communities, the solution lies with the local communities. That is where I disagree. I don't know a situation where you have constituted authority We have the government in place. We have the security apparatus. And here are communities that are being invaded. And the basic function of any government in place, if that government will have its own legitimacy, is the protection of lives and property and the welfare of the people. Now, when people are being attacked by night, the person who is attacked, I've told you, is these vulnerable communities. The person who is attacked is not armed. If our communities today are allowed to bear arms, these attackers, you won't see them the next 2 days. Ditto for all communities in the Middle Belt, because it's not only Southern Kaduna. In Plateau is the same problem. In Benue is the same problem. Niger is the same problem, and all over. Now, these attackers know that they find communities that are not armed, so they cannot defend themselves. And because the communities are not armed, and the persons whose responsibility is to defend these communities is the constituted authorities. But oftentimes when these communities are attacked, when the police come, they come either late, when the attackers have finished what they are doing, and run into the nearby forest, and they look around there, and when they are told to go after them, they will tell you, we have not been given the command to go after them. But when they see the youth that are ready to go after them, even with their sticks and matches, and bows and arrows, they are the ones that will be arrested and detained. So this is a situation where you can't explain. So when somebody says, oh, it is the communities, that I now realize that is why this very false narrative, very deceptive and misleading narrative of herders farmers clash or communal clash or reprisal attacks. These are all the various narratives, but none of them defines the real problem.
I know yesterday you had a high-powered ESCO meeting with the elders of Southern Kaduna. What have you been able to pinpoint why you're being attacked?
That is what
Because this is almost becoming like a genocide now.
That is what I am saying, that everyone is asking the question, but we have come to find out. Since these invaders invade our communities, they kill people in their hundreds, in their sleep, and the very government will call it herders farmers clash. Those people that come to kill, they don't come with cattle. It is only when they have killed and chased away people that they come with cattle from only God knows where. Those people that are killed, you have seen the gory pictures. You see children, 3 months old, women, pregnant women, ripped open. Are they people that are killed in their farms? Do they look like people that they are killed in their sleep?
Okay, Honorable Asake, you still have more time to speak on that. We want to go on a short break and take some messages. When we return, we'll continue with the Arise interview. Stay with us. You're welcome back to the Arise interview with me, Christian Ogodo. Thanks for joining us or staying with us. We're live in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. Okay, let's cross over to London again via WebEx and join our international security affairs analyst and terrorism expert, David Otto. David, you heard all the narratives of Jonathan Asake. It looks so far that, you know, something genocidal is really going on in southern Kaduna. What kind of talks, what kind of reprisal attack would cause these everyday killings? What are the issues? Because I've asked him and he cannot pinpoint why the incessant attacks on his people. David?
Yes, of course. The Honorable has struggled to come up with any reasons why these attacks are happening in southern Kaduna. And I think this is the first point of call. While you're trying to look for a solution, you must understand the underlying factors why a certain set of criminals or jihadists or whatever you want to call them, why they are carrying out attacks against another set of people. And the very the quick fix of this is to always paint this in the direction of ethnic cleansing, genocidal attacks, from one community to another. But again, you've got to be able to point out which community actually perpetrates this attack, and if indeed that particular community claims these attacks as coming from them, that is when you may have to begin to draw any narratives of genocide. I think what the problem is, and I've looked into this, is that there are underlying issues that are happening within these communities, and when one community attacks another community, because of the principle of self-help, the other community would carry out and attack an attack against against the other, but perhaps not in the same degree or proportionality that the first attack happened. And there is also a problem of exposure where perhaps the southern communities, the southern Kaduna community has more voice to actually illustrate the number of killings that are occurring within its community, and you would find that perhaps other communities don't have the same.
Just here, when you said that it's one community attacking the other community, this isn't the case in southern Kaduna. I think it's expedient that we get the narrative right. People are perpetually being attacked, being killed, even at a wedding band party. More than 22 people were put down. So are you going to refer to that as communal clashes or clash?
I think you've got to do that because the people that carry out these attacks come from a community. It doesn't matter how close that community is or how far away that community is. They are made up of a community, and you've got to be able to look at this from the angle of one community attacking the other. That is the only way you can situate your threat analysis, understanding where the threat is coming from. If you put this along the lines of maybe Muslims killing Christians or one ethnic group killing the other, which of course could be the case, then what you need to do is to again go back to why is one particular group killing the other, and it boils down to the motivational factors, the push and pull factors. What is it that is not being done? Is there a political connotation behind these kind of attacks? Are there any external links to these attacks? Maybe linked to what is happening in the northeast of Nigeria with the Boko Haram and the ISIS group. So I think it's important that for the purpose of looking for a solution, you have to break this down and not just look at it from the attacks themselves, because the attacks have already happened. And in order to resolve the problem, you've got to go back to why they happened and get your answers from there.
Okay, yes, and getting the answers from there, the Arise News tried to reach about three general officers commanding three different divisions. First was the 8th Division, and I spoke with the GOC there, and of course it categorically said that Southern Kaduna wasn't under his jurisdiction. Rather, he operates between Zamfara and Katsina states, and probably Yobe, that's the jurisdiction of the 8th Division. And apparently, he was already in Faskari in some of the forests there where the Nigerian army is battling bandits and terrorists in that zone. And of course, I reached the GOC, the General Officer Commanding one division in Kaduna. And again, he said the southern Kaduna falls under Operation Safe Haven, that's under 3rd Division with headquarters in Jos. We couldn't get any of them to come and be part of the Arise interview so that they could apprise us with the security situation. Ditto, the Commissioner of Police in Kaduna State, he answered our calls but never returned our messages to inviting him to be part of this program. So there's a kind of security challenges that the people of Southern Kaduna face. How do you want to evaluate it? Where does hope lie for the people, for Sokapu?
Well, for the conspiracy against the people of Southern Kaduna, which I can say, hearing the narratives coming from the government that should protect the people, hearing the statement coming from Garba Shehu, representing the presidency, hearing the utterances of the governor of Kaduna State, suggest that the people of Southern Kaduna must cry out to the wall for help. We are under siege. Ethnic cleansing is going on. Contrary to what David is saying, there is no community attacking any other community. I keep saying and I insist, in Southern Kaduna, we have about 67 ethnic nationalities under Sokapu. And we also cohabit that part of the state with people from other parts of the country and even outside. Different nationalities. Yorubas are there, Igbos are there, Efik are there, Ijos are there, and the people have never had any problem, any clash with anybody. People can take a trip there. You can go there with your crew and find out. The people that are staying there will tell you. So when I hear this narrative that communities, contrary to what he is saying, people come from outside and collaborate with people that are within that locality, and they massacre people in their sleep. And we want to.
So there is insider collaboration.
There is. Let me tell you what is happening. We have gone round all these communities that have been displaced to provide relief material, because the government of Kaduna State will not just allow the constitution of a former IDP camp where people can be cared for, their medication, their food supply, and other necessities of life. So most of these people that are displaced only stay with relations in other communities. That is the story. And so we will not allow them to die of hunger. So we in Sokapu, we cry out. Faith-based organizations, good-spirited individuals come to our help so that we give them food and other necessities of life. But for one to say that this is a clash between two communities is being economical with the truth. The governor of Kano State just recently cried out that the Fulani herdsmen that are coming from outside the country into Nigeria, they come in heavily armed. And he even suggested that there should be a review of the ECOWAS protocol that allowed this free flow of people into the countries. And we know that the northern borders have been made so porous, so dangerously porous, that I've never seen that kind of a thing in my life. That people just go in and come out. So these dangerous people come into the country. The president himself in 2016, when these killings were going on, he said these herdsmen are coming from Libya and other neighboring countries. The governor of Kaduna State himself has said it in several occasions, that these herdsmen come from Mali, from Guinea, and other countries. In fact, when the killings were taking place in Southern Kaduna in 2016, he said he identified those killers and he traced them and he paid them. And his reason, using the taxpayers' money, of course, I know, that so that they will stop killing. Whatever that logic is, I don't know. But one thing we know, that from that time he claimed he paid them, he never told us how much he paid them. But he told us that he paid them so that they would stop killing. But the killings have not stopped. Instead, the killings have increased. Like I just said here, people are being invaded on a daily basis. But let me tell you why these killings are going on. To change demographics. We know from what we are seeing that communities are displaced. If there is a rule of law, if there is orderliness, when somebody goes into your house and kill your children, rape your wife, and chase you out, if there is law, some authority should come and apprehend that person, bring him to justice. But there are several communities in our own communities now, in southern Kaduna, that have been so chased out. They have been so killed, buried in mass graves. And they are staying out. They cannot go back to those communities. They cannot go to their farms. Mind you, they are farming communities. And they are facing serious hunger. Yet we have authorities in place that have not made any attempt to chase those people out.
And these are foreigners.
These are the local Fulanis that we have. I used to say that no, they are not to be blamed on this. But we found out when I kept going around the displaced communities, when we were providing relief materials for them, when I asked them, do you know the people that are doing this? They say, we know the people that are collaborating with the people that come to kill us. The local people, they have local Fulanis that have become so criminalized. They connect and call in the invaders who come on motorbikes, and they come and do the killing. And then they go. And then we begin to say it's farmers. But when they have done the killing, then you will now see strange people coming to occupy those communities with plenty of cattle that you don't know where they are coming from. And they occupy the community. And yet the authorities will look at them and will begin to speak all the grammar. Oh, it is cattle rustling. When this commentator here mentioned that the communities, the natives rustle cattle, who knows about the business of cattle more? The real cattle rustlers that we know from the time I was a child are the Fulani people themselves who rear cattle. They are the real cattle rustlers. So even our people have gone into cattle rustling, but when you dare it to, the rear cattle, when you dare to rear cattle, they will come and pack it in the night. They are the same people. When they invade you, they invade your communities, they kill, they rape, they maim, they abduct, and when they see you with this cattle, they pack them away. So I don't know where this concept of cattle rustling that is causing the communal clash is coming about. This is ethnic cleansing going on in our communities. This is a change in demographics and taking over of our lands. Okay. And that is the mission.
Okay, a good place to anchor there while we take some messages and go on a short break. Stay with us, we'll be back. You're welcome back to the Rise interview with me, Christian Ogdo. We're live in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. Let's cross over again to London and speak to David Otto. He's an international security analyst, an expert in terrorism or counter-terrorism. David, would you advocate that, terrorists, bandits, invaders like this, some form of negotiation in paying them, ransom money so that at least all these killings can cease? Would you encourage that? Do you do that in counter-insurgency and terrorism? Is it something to be encouraged, David?
I think it's very difficult to throw money at these sorts of problems and expect that by paying money to bandits or terrorists, the problem is going to be resolved. Most often, when the money gets finished, they would come back for another one. It's never a sustainable strategy. I think I also just wanted to make it very clear to the honorable gentleman that the purpose of these discussions are squarely to advocate for a solution in terms of the way forward. And as he mentioned in one of his statements, these attacks are not carried out without the knowledge of some members of the communities because, of course, when insurgents act, when bandits act, there is a huge level of intelligence gathering and surveillance that they carry out. And that is why in my beginning of my statement, I made it very clear that the community must take upon themselves, to be at the forefront of resolving these problems, but also at the forefront of understanding why these problems escalate in the first place. And as he mentioned, there are instances where issues have emerged within these communities regarding cattle rustling between one community or one group to another, which of course, could be one of the factors that lead to some of these reprisal attacks. It is not all the factors, but it could be some of the factors. And I think what is important for not just the federal government, but the Kaduna state government and the local communities, and indeed the Honorable Jonathan to look at, is to try and understand the real dynamics of these problems, because you can't solve problems simply by escalating the impact of the problems. You've got to go back to the drawing table and understand where these problems are coming from and who indeed should be part of the solution. Because what you don't want to do is to bring people that are part of the problem to try and allocate them the solution part of the problem, because it's never going to be resolved. So I think this is not something which is a simple exercise, and it shouldn't be an exercise of blame game, of trying to blame particular communities or blame the government. I think what needs to be done is to as in his position, is to try and come up with a solution that is sustainable to these problems. And at the local level, it could be seen as a way forward towards trying to resolve the crisis. But the government also needs to support these solutions, because without the support of the government, without the support of the local communities, and indeed the victims being supported, these problems will continue to happen. Because I can bet you that one attack leads to another, and then another. It's a simple matter of action, reaction, counter reaction, and we're going to see that if the problems are not comprehensively addressed.
So David, definitely seem to be escalating the whole situation. Counter-attack and counter-attack, and attack and the rest. But have you looked at the international dimension and, of course, the West African Protocol of Free Movement, across the border and the rest, and the destabilization from Libya, Mali, and issues of extremists in these places infiltrating the Nigerian state? David?
Yes, I have. Yes, I have looked at some of these issues. And again, these are small factors which are extremely important for the government to address. And it's not just the Nigerian government, because the Nigerian government alone cannot tackle the border insecurity, cannot tackle the porousness that exists between the borders. This is a Western creation of states which are very, very porous, and it allows for people to travel using very unconventional routes to penetrate the country to do business. And this is one of the reasons why we have continuously seen the military finding it very difficult to eliminate Boko Haram around the regions of the Lake Chad, because what they simply do is to use the very complex waterways in the axis of the Lake Chad, the massive forest, the caves and the mountains, to escape and carry out attacks. So the international dimension is important, but what I think is very, very effective is for each government to be encouraged within this ECOWAS setting to develop a national strategy, and then use these national strategies to form a regional tactics to deal with this crisis. It all begins from the local communities, and that is why I mentioned that whatever happens, the local community have to be at the forefront of it. Even if it means crying out loud to the state government, that should be their role, because that is where the solution starts.
Yes, thanks very much for your thoughts there, David Otto. I hope time will allow us to come back to you. But let me return to Honorable Jonathan Asake. Where lies the solution now? Is Sokapu ready to sit down and judge instead of war? Like
Sokapu has always been ready. Our people have always been ready. But ready to sit down, you are sitting in your house, you are sleeping, somebody comes to kill you, you are crying out and they say you shouldn't cry. And you are saying this is the problem. And somebody is saying, no, that's not the problem. You are saying I have stomach ache, somebody say no, you are having headache. So that is where the problem starts. Now, David said that the local communities, he has been talking about local communities being involved. I did not understand until the last statement when he said we should cry out. That is what we have been doing. That's what we can do. If we had a way of defending ourselves, we will not be crying out to the government. But we are waiting for the government to defend us. But what is going on, like I said, in our communities, is that it is land that is being taken. Because those people have occupied the lands. Let me give you an example. There is a place that was a grazing reserve in my place. They made it 33,000 hectares exclusively for grazing. But today, that place has been increased to 74,000 hectares by this present government under Erufai. No compensation whatsoever. The local farmers there, the natives who have land there, as of the last count, 67 people have been killed trying to get back there to farm. They are not allowed. It is exclusive for Fulanis. But that was supposed to be a grazing reserve. In fact, it is the fastest growing town right now in the entire state with all the infrastructure. Now, this is just a model. That is why when the issue of Ruga came in the last time, it was supposed to be a model that would go after this Laduga to plant Fulani settlements all over the country, because it was supposed to be a model starting with six Ruga settlements in every state. Multiply that by 36 and the FCT, you have about 212 Ruga settlements. Now, this particular Ruga settlement that we have in Kaduna State, that the land was taken over without compensation, has now metamorphosed into, they have a district head. They are demanding for a political constituency. That is what will be replicated all over the nation. And so, government also is designating places.
Jonathan, I'm so sorry, we've run out of time, you know. Maybe you'd have another opportunity again, you know, when we get the leadership of the Mieti Ala to come on the program. With all pleasure. Thank you, Honorable Jonathan Asake, President of Southern Kaduna People's Union, SOKAPU, and Fireway in London, David Otto, International Security Analyst and Counter-Terrorism Expert. Thanks, gentlemen, for joining us on the Arise interview. And that's our edition for this today.